Welcome to Language Surfers Podcast, a space with fresh waves for the mind, dedicated to create a platform where professionals from both language industry and academia can share their professional experiences, and where we also explore different career paths at different stages. Hi Raquel,
Hello.
thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. And for the audience of the podcast, I would just like to briefly introduce you. So, Raquel Lázaro Gutierrez is an associate professor in the Department of Modern Philology at the University of Alcala in Madrid, Spain. She teaches in the degree in modern languages and translation, but also in the master's degree in intercultural communication, public service translation, and interpreting. She has been a member of the FITISPO's research group since 2001, and she's also the vice president of the European Network Public Service Translation and Interpreting, which is a European association. So, first of all, as I mentioned, thank you so much for joining us, Raquel. And I would like to start by asking you if you could just walk us through your academic background. What have you studied, and what was your motivation to study languages?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for your kind introduction. Well, I started as a student of English studies, and then when I finished, my last year was in the UK, and when I was there, I was already in touch with plenty of different languages and cultures because I was doing my Erasmus in London. So, yeah, I started loving languages from a very early age. Um, it is not a straight way, I would say, because when you are young, there are plenty of things you like to do. But languages have always been, something of interest to me.
Yeah, that's so nice. And it's very well connected with traveling as well, I suppose. As you well said, you were interested in having an Erasmus in another country. But so after you finished your bachelor's degree, when did you know you wanted to have a PhD and to start your career in the academia?
Well, I've always liked research. I mean, it is something that sounds a little bit awkward when you're talking about research at an early age. But I remember when I was an undergraduate student that I would easily engage in little research projects which were offered by my teachers, my professors. And well, at the very beginning, I was not thinking about being part of the academia, but I finished my undergraduate program and I was traveling. I was, going sometimes to the UK, some other times to France. And one day I saw the offer of PhD courses at my university. It was sent to me. And I saw a couple of courses which I thought were very interesting, and I decided to enroll in them. But just in a couple of courses, so I didn't enroll in the PhD program at all. And then I received a call from one of my former professors, and she told me, "Hey, what you've done is actually a little bit strange because you're enrolling in a couple of courses, but you're not enrolling in the PhD program. You should try. Why not?" And then I started, and little by little, I discovered that that was actually what I liked the most.
The research part, right?
Yes, the research part, yes.
That's,
Above teaching, I have to say, yes.
yeah, that's so great. And it's interesting how this opportunity really came to you, right? It was not particularly searching for it, but it just came to you.
Yes, at a particular age, the thing is that you get plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of things you can do. So at the time, well, I was in my early 20s. So I was thinking about so many things. I was actually preparing public exams to become a secondary teacher, a secondary school teacher, and I had done the master's degree that was allowing us to become a secondary school teacher. And that was the most obvious thing for me to do, also to travel and things like those. So yeah, university was not amongst the things which came first to my mind. So it was a little bit because of this professor phoning me and saying, okay, if you find these couple of courses interesting, why shouldn't you do the PhD program? Yeah. And some years later, I'm here, I'm part of the academia.
Yeah, exactly. So such a big impact just right from a recommendation from a professor, and here you have all your professional career just
Yeah.
from a recommendation. Yeah, but you took the chance and you're there in the academia. So when you decided to enroll in the PhD program, how did you how did you choose the topic of your PhD? And what exactly was your research?
Well, PhD programs were somehow different when I started because right now in most of the countries we've got programs which include a master's degree and then you jump into PhD studies. Well, at the time, undergraduate programs were longer, and then you had the chance to directly get into PhD studies. The thing is that the PhD studies started with some courses. So instead of the master's degree, you had to complete more or less 1 year with some courses. And I decided about my topic after attending these courses. There was one particular course which was led by Carmen Valero, and it was an eye opener to me because she was talking about intercultural communication. She was talking about interpreting, in a particular kind of interpreting in public service settings. And that was linking very well with my experiences as a traveler, right? So, well, we have to think that at that time, well, actually, we didn't have smartphones, right? So the thing is that I was recalling all the time that when I was going to the doctors when I was abroad, I used to be very nervous. And even though my linguistic competence was very good, because I used to spend some time in the UK and then in France. And in both countries, I mean, my linguistic competence in both English and French was very good. But when I had to go to the doctors, I was not even able to utter a single word. I was getting so anxious that my linguistic competence just left. And well, many times, well, I remember just once that I got stuck because I was not able to remember one word. And just because I didn't remember one word, I was not able to speak. So perhaps nowadays I could have taken my phone,
Hmm.
I could have searched for the words, and well, perhaps I could have solved the problem that way. But at the time, we didn't have smartphones. So those problems, well, I felt them as more complicated. So when I was thinking about, well, the profession of the interpreter in hospitals, in healthcare settings, and how communication worked in those particular settings where participants have to undergo a particular state of mind and some feelings which are usually not the ones that you've got when you're having a friendly conversation.
Exactly.
Those things were particularly interesting to me. And well, that was the reason why I chose to research into medical interpreting.
Yeah, that's such an interesting and a topic with such a big impact in the society, right? Because as you well say, when you have a visit to the doctors, there's also an emotional impact and also the intercultural differences, right? Because I think that this is also what you've mentioned that really caught your attention, the intercultural communication and differences.
Yes, exactly, exactly. The setting is particular, so the communication works in a different way. And well, actually, it is. I would say it is a topic that is never out of date because well, we still need to go to the doctors, and it is true that communication might change in that. well, nowadays we're living times in which new technologies also play an important role, and there's a lot of communication over the phone, for
Mm.
instance.
Yeah.
But people will have to go to the doctors always.
Oh,
So I think it is a very interesting topic, which is never outdated.
yeah, exactly. And still, we're in this globalized world where a lot of people move from one country to another for specific or longer periods of time. So, as you all say, sometimes English, it's easy, to communicate on a daily basis, but not all the doctors, for example, we're in Spain, not all the doctors speak in English. So, you need someone to transfer your message in the local language. So, obviously, this is never outdated, I would say, as you well pointed out. And thinking about your career once again, when you are getting closer to your PhD, is there a turning moment in your career where when you just stopped and think, okay, my PhD is finishing, what do I want to do with my life? Do I continue in the academia or do I switch to the industry? Did you have this moment, or was it clear for you that during the PhD period is like academia is for me?
Well, I would say there were plenty of moments, not particularly when I was finishing my PhD. Actually, it took me plenty of years to finish it. It took me around 9 years to finish the whole thing, together with the courses, with the, well, we had a smaller dissertation before the final dissertation. So it took me plenty of years, and in those years, there are plenty of different moments. Well, for instance, I remember once that I was tempted to start a job in the industry in one company, which offered quite a nice job to me. At that time, I didn't have any kind of financial support from the university. Well, I did have some support, but it was not a lot actually. So I was working for the university part time, very few hours, with a huge workload, and then it was not, I mean, it was just a collaboration, so it was not particularly well paid. And I got an offer for a full time job. And obviously, that full time job was, well, much better paid. And yeah, I seriously thought about taking the job. But then I stopped and realized that actually, well, I thought that I would still completing my PhD while taking up that other full time job. So I said to myself, okay, what I'm going to do with this is just, I'm going to overload myself.
Yeah.
And so I decided to complete my income, because obviously that is also an issue. To complete my income, I would accept other part time jobs, and in that way, I had time to work for the university, write my PhD dissertation, have some money to just to live. And well, that was my decision at the time. But yeah, it is true there were plenty of moments in which I thought about leaving and about having, don't know, a less complicated life. You know, one of those jobs in which you do not have to be so proactive, that you just do what you have to do. You're following directions, and you get your money by the end of the month. But yeah, I think that wouldn't have worked for me for my whole life either.
Yes, exactly. Especially if you like research, right, and writing articles, this is the part of the complementary part, maybe from the industry, especially from the language industry, because most of
Yeah.
it is language service provision, right? Not There are some companies obviously which do research, but indeed this is the major part in the academia, I would say.
Yes, yes,
And
exactly.
exactly from what you mentioned, it's you had to struggle, especially with this economic part, until you decided and you got to be stable from a financial point of view. So
Yes. Well,
because
it is.
having several part-time jobs, that's not easy. And as you will say, with only one part-time, you were already overloaded in terms of workload. So having another one, but at least you found these ways of, getting the economic support that you needed in order to keep your path and not abandon it, because maybe the other way, at least for your personal situation, would have been the easiest one, but then you chose something that you really wanted and then just kept on finding different solutions.
Yes, exactly. I think it is very important that you love your work, that you love your job, because otherwise, I mean, most of your time is going to be spent
Yeah.
in your workplace. So you better love what you do. Otherwise, you're going to be just waiting for the weekend, week after week. And that is not very comfortable either.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you're very right. I mean, and normally if you have a job of which you're passionate about or in a field you're passionate about, everything comes more natural. You don't need someone to push you, right, to do
Yeah.
something. And there's always frustration, but I suppose it's at a minimum level.
Yes, of course. You have to put things in a balance. Yes, that's true. Yeah, frustration. I mean, frustration is everywhere. It is not only at workplace. You've got frustration in all the areas of your life. But yeah, you have to be happy with what you do, and this is, I think, that is the key to, well, I wouldn't say to happiness, but maybe to peace, right? To saying, okay, at least I'm doing what I like.
Exactly. Yes. And when you had it clear at that moment, you had it clear that you wanted to stay in the academia, and now you're an associate professor. So how was it for you to get this stable position? Did you have how is the if you could explain a bit for the audience the recruitment process for such a role in the university? Do you have an exam? Do you have interviews? Maybe we are quite familiar with what happens in the industry. There are several rounds of interviews. Sometimes you have to pass a test or some translation proof if you are applying for an in-house translation position. But how is it in the academia?
Well, it changes enormously from one country to the other, and actually, inside Spain, there is a new law which is changing things again.
Okay.
Yeah, and this law will come to force next week, so this is quite
Oh.
recent. Yes. So perhaps what I'm already going to say is a bit outdated. We still don't know, because when this law comes to force, then what happens is that it is a national law, and then the regions will have to elaborate their own regulations, and then the universities. So uh, it is probable that the system is going to remain similar, maybe not exactly the same, but similar. So usually at the Spanish university, you've got different kinds of positions and different ways in which you can enter university. Well, you can start as a PhD student, right? Receiving a grant from the government, the university, or the regional government. So I had one of those. I was lucky enough to have one of those to finish my PhD. But there are other ways of entering the university. Before that, I had a contract as a researcher, and that was a part-time contract, which is not the same as the collaboration that I was doing at the very early stage of my university path. Then, well, either you finish your your PhD, which has been already funded by the government with one of these grants, and you manage to stay at the university because you have already been teaching, and well, you've got all the things which are required to remain in the university, or you start as a professional, right? And that is that you may have another job outside academia, and then you start teaching for the university, right? And this is a part-time job, and it is not your main job. So usually scholars will start in one of those ways. Why am I mentioning the professional way? Because actually many professionals who work for the industry at a particular time, after having been working for the university for several years, they also decide to stay at the university. So both paths are actually quite popular. And then, which is the following step? The following step is to start as an assistant professor. So, as an assistant, there are two ways, there are two kinds of assistant contracts: PhD or non PhD assistant professor, right? But the most common one is the PhD assistant professor. So usually you need to have completed your PhD and you need another thing which is called accreditation. And that is that you have to present all what you've done, all of your merits, we say. You have to present the years that you've been teaching, you have to present the publications that you may have, whether you've taken part in projects or not, to a national or regional quality agency. And then, if you fulfill the requirements, then you are given this accreditation that will allow you to submit an application for an assistant professor position. So, this position is already a tenure track position,
Okay.
but this will only be for several years, usually 5. And you access after having presented all of your documents, and these documents are examined by a board, and most of the times you also do an interview, but you do no exam at this stage.
Okay.
Then you've got 5 years to get your following accreditation as an associate professor. There are two kinds of associate professors in professorships in Spain, but I'm not going to get deeper into that because, well, it is associate professor anyway. So you need this accreditation. Once you have it, you are allowed to sit for a public exam
Okay.
that will give you access as access to a permanent position. So it is as if you had completed your tenure. And in order for this position to be offered, then well, it is necessary that the universities have one free position, and this is related to the national budget each year. So this is just entering the public administration as a civil servant, or as a worker for a for a public university.
Yeah, that,
And then you also asked me about how I felt when I got it.
yes.
Okay, I'm going to tell you that first I had my I have to say that perhaps I lived difficult times, but to be honest, I think that it doesn't matter which times you live, they are always difficult then in the end. But what happened to me is that I finished my grants, and then I also worked as a visitor, as one of these professionals who taught at the university, because there were not a lot of positions offered. So I had my accreditation as an assistant professor, but there were not enough positions for all the people who were applying for them. So I still was working for a couple of years as a professional, because I also had my professional background related to the years that I had been having part-time jobs while
Okay.
I was doing my PhD. So, after that, finally, there was a position as an assistant professor that I was able to win. And I remember it was during the summer, and when I saw the lists, and I saw that I was the first in the list, so that meant that I was going to start as an assistant professor in September. I was absolutely happy, absolutely happy. And actually, this was not long ago. This was 12 years ago. And I had already been trying to become a mother for 2 years. And I don't know what happened. I think that my body said, okay, this is the time. So I got pregnant. So for me, it was not only mental relaxation, it was also physical relaxation, and just um, having the opportunity of looking at my future life in a different way. So that was, yes, that was a magical moment, I have to say.
Yeah, and it was, the results of all your efforts throughout these years, because as you well mentioned, all those part-times that you had were in the end, the connecting dots to support you to get this position.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And it is true, it was hard. I mean, it took me several years to have one of these assistant professorships, which is not even the permanent position, right? But still, I mean, it was worth it in the end. So yeah, I got really, really happy.
Yeah, and congratulations on that, because it takes a lot of perseverance, because even though you were struggling, maybe economically speaking, you still got the energy to continue your research, to continue to public, because to publish different articles, right, and disseminate the results of your research projects. And in the end, these are basic requirements in order to to get into the academia. So yeah, I really appreciate, and I know I can personally share from my experience, because while I was doing my PhD, you were my colleague, and you were always there supporting, and seeing you how you know perseverant you were. I was always seeing you like, it might be difficult, but for sure she'll make it. And indeed, yeah, because in the end, I moved out from the academia, and yeah, that's also one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast, because I want to give these perspectives, and to give more visibility to the academia and people in the academia, for those who are in the industry, to see the differences, or you can move from one field into another.
True.
And sometimes, we have this perception that somebody knows from the very beginning they want to stay in the academia, and it's like it's very straightforward. But
Mm.
then there are so many obstacles throughout the journey. And as you well said, it takes a lot of mental strength and perseverance, and knowing what you really want.
That's it. That's it. I mean, for me, it was just thinking, okay, what I really want to do. And many times I was thinking, okay, if I get out of academia and start a job in the industry, well, I'm sure I will still be publishing articles. So then, in the end, I better stay and be paid for writing those articles.
And on your daily basis, could you just explain us how does your day look like? I mean, you're a professor, you teach, you prepare your classes, you also do research. You're also the director of the department. Maybe this is something else I would like to cover with you. Once you have a position in the university, how do you escalate? In this case, it would be, right, being the director of the department. What do you do as a director? How do you become one?
Yeah. Uh, well, there are, first of all, let me explain that there are three main pillars in
Mhm.
the job of a scholar. Uh, well, one of them is teaching, obviously, another one researching, and the other one is administration. And within this administration and managerial part of the job, then we've got these positions that you may take.
Mhm.
And one of them is the one of head of director of a department. I've been the head of the Department of Modern Languages for 4 years already. And well, it is not something difficult. It is just you have to present yourself as a candidate,
Mhm.
and then you might get elected by the members of your department or not. But let me tell you that usually there are not many people who present themselves as candidates. So it is very likely that if you present yourself, then you will be elected, and everybody will thank you because you've presented yourself, you
Oh,
know.
that's really interesting. And why is that? Because you have to
Oh,
leave
because
aside a bit your teaching initiatives and then just focus more on the administrative part.
yes, exactly. So the thing is that I would say that most of the scholars don't like the administrative part
Mm.
of our jobs. I think it is very natural because usually the initial motivations at first are related to either teaching or research or both, and administration is almost never taken into account. So there is something that happens when you are in that suddenly you might think that there is something which is suitable for you or there is something you would like to try. And actually, I wanted to try because when I started from the very beginning at the university, I got several tasks coordinating a master's degree.
Mhm.
So I thought it was, well, that part was actually not so bad. It is true that it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and sometimes at particular times the workload is quite high. But well, I I wouldn't say is a bad thing. I mean, I quite like it. I mean, it's got several things which are actually quite nice, and some of them are that you are in a very in very close contact with your colleagues.
Mhm.
You get to know better about your organization. That it is as if you had a deeper understanding and knowledge about the place you're working at.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it is not just that you're just one little part and you do your little piece of teaching or your little piece of research. You've got like the view to the whole picture, right? And you understand your institution better. And actually I liked it, and I like organizing things.
Mhm.
So little things such as, don't know, building a schedule or organizing the teaching in the department, like having teachers for the courses and things like those. I actually like it because it's like putting things in place.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a part which I think is actually quite nice. And well, you get a reduction from your teaching when you do that. So usually you're in a way compensated. You're given that extra time to do those administrative tasks. It is true that most of the times, I mean, the workload is higher than the hours you're taking from your teaching. But
Okay.
well, you simply need to get organized.
Yeah.
So it is not so bad. And as how is my kind of my day, my daily routine
Mhm.
at work? Well, I've got some times which are already fixed, and those are the teaching hours.
Yeah.
So the teaching hours are going to fall every week on the same days, same times. But I do not have many teaching hours actually. So my teaching hours this term, for instance, are just 1 hour in the morning on Monday, 2 hours in the morning on Thursday. And then I've got office hours to be with my students, but I can reorganize them more or less, well, depending on the availability of my students. I can reorganize them so that we can find a nice time for both of us to meet. And then the rest of the time is well, is not pre-scheduled. So it is getting full with meetings and with tasks like research tasks or administration tasks as long as the weeks are progressing. And I like that quite a lot too, because I don't like routines.
Hmm.
So for me, that is also, well, something I like doing, like organizing week after week, organizing my schedule. And usually, what happens is that I'm working from 9 in the morning to 8:30, many times in the evening, but I've got slots in the middle. I've realized that's the best way for me. So instead
Mhm.
of saying things such as, okay, today I will try to finish earlier and then have life. For me, it actually works better to start early in the morning.
Mhm.
If I'm lucky enough, I can stop in the middle of the morning, have breakfast, something like that, then stop in the middle of the day for lunch, then maybe have a crazy evening, like some meetings, but then in the middle something else, and I will take my son to his classes or things like those. But I kind of think from the very beginning, okay, I'm going to be working from 9 in the morning until 8:30 in the evening. In that way, I can check my emails first thing in the morning, and when the day finishes, I can still check what is being done and what needs to be done, preferably first time in the morning the following day. And well, once you discover a nice way in which you can organize your time and your tasks, then everything runs quite smoothly.
Yeah, definitely. It seems a very dynamic schedule, and it requires a lot of time management, right? And organizing well your time and your tasks, because otherwise it can feel like, oh my God, you're working 24 hours, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you stop between the days, but yeah, in the industry normally we have this fixed schedule, right? You work from 9 to 6 with 1 hour lunch break, but obviously, as you say, it depends on what suits you in the end, right? Because maybe this type of flexibility also works best for you, and it allows you to have this life and work balance, where maybe you can take your kid to the school, bring him home, and you're not struggling maybe as others might be doing from the industry.
Yes, exactly. So for me, this is a great advantage. And many times, well, right now I would say that perhaps half of my meetings, um, well, half of my meetings are scheduled by other people. So
Mhm.
I do not have a vote or a voice about when I want those meetings to take place.
Okay.
But for the other half, I can decide.
Yeah.
And that is great because just imagine, well, if I have to drop my son at school at early in the morning at 8:30, and I'm scheduled for a meeting at 8, I can say, hey, I'm going to have it at 9. So that is actually quite nice for me. And it is also freedom actually to have the control over your time,
Hmm.
to realize that you have a meeting on Tuesday at 10 because you scheduled that meeting, because you wanted to have that meeting. So it is not that someone else is telling you, okay, you have to be here at this time. Don't know. And then in the end, well, obviously it is a job, right? So I'm doing the things I have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But having that control over your time and over the management of your tasks and schedules, that feels nice. That feels as if you were actually your own boss in a way.
Yeah, the owner of your time, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we go back a bit to the connection between academia and the industry, for example, how do you prepare the students for getting into the real professional life? And here I'm talking about the industry, right? Because that's where we get the basics while we are students. What types of specific and practical subjects, internships, or maybe different research programs with between collaborations between academia and in the industry? What specific initiatives like this do you have at the University of Alcala?
Well, of course, we've got internships both at the undergraduate and graduate level. Well, I was running the internships program of the master's degree in intercultural communication and public service interpreting and translation for 10 years.
Hmm.
with great help from you for 1 year when I was on my maternity leave. So you know how hard that could be, but also how rewarding it is
Exactly.
because you're in touch with the industry, and that is very valuable to. I mean, it is valuable for the students, but as a scholar, that you have to be in the academia. And by the way, when you get your permanent position, your full time position, you're not allowed to work outside the university. There is a nice way to be in touch with with real practice in the industry, to be up to date, and in that way you're also able to incorporate the new things into your teaching, so that your students are able to learn what they need to to be prepared for the industry. So I think, well, the internships programs, one of the best ways to having that access to the industry, to the real job life.
And from your experience, are the private companies open to these kind of internships? When I suppose that there are agreements, right? That's what I remember. We normally have agreements. And what I really liked about the program is that the internships, you already give the students a selection, an opportunity, I mean, a list of companies based on the specific field they want to, they are more interested, either the legal, the
Yeah.
healthcare field. So the university already has works in advance to have these agreements with the companies. And from your experience, so many more than a decade there, uh, do you see that the companies are open to such agreements, or do you feel that there are specific sectors where there's not such a great interest? Because in the end, taking the student and as an intern is also, right, a responsibility for the company.
Yes, well, there is a little bit of everything, but I would say that many companies are willing to receive students. And well, of course, you have to negotiate as a coordinator, as an internships coordinator. You have to negotiate and make things clear so that everybody knows what is involved,
Mm,
because it is a matter of, well, showing or putting your interests on the table and saying, okay, this is what I want, and this is what I want you to do, if possible. And then things usually work, and if they don't, well, the agreements are not signed. So yes, I would say there are many companies which receive students. Some of them receive them for a short period of time, and that is not going to take a lot of work for them. But then what happens is that they train the students, and once they are trained, the students leave.
yeah,
Some others prefer to have students receive students for longer periods of time, and then they will train them and then engage them as workers. Usually, in when this happens, students are being paid as students, right, as interns.
yeah,
But well, this can also happen. And well, I think it is a nice way to cooperate. Many companies also need personnel, need staff, so it is also a way for them to start that kind of selection process by trying the workers, which
yeah,
is also, I think, it is a nice approach too, because many times with a job interview and just examining CVs, it is not enough to know if a particular worker is going to be fine for your company, right? But if you engage a student and then you know that person works well and you like to keep him or her, then why not, right? It is another way of recruiting personnel. But yeah, many companies want to receive students. I haven't done this for already some years, for 3 or 4 years, but I've got very good memories about cooperating with companies in the internships programs.
Yeah, I think these are very great programs and they give a great opportunity to students also, because most of them are studying translation. And you know that translation is also an industry where a majority of the people would also consider being freelance, right? So
Yeah.
having this internship also, I think that it allows the student to identify whether they fit or they would like to be in a company as part of a full-time employee, or rather just, as you all say, be your own boss and start the freelancing part. So I think it's a win-win situation for the three parties: the student, the academia, and also the industry.
Yes, exactly. And many students need to try
Hmm.
because one thing is what you live as a student in class, and a different thing is when you start working. Many times, students perceive a huge difference between what is done in class and what happens at work. Well, you can do plenty of practice in class, but you are not inside the work environment. I mean, you're not working with other professionals and you do not have a boss. If you miss a deadline, then it is not as important as in real life, when you might lose a client or you might be fired. So, yeah, for the students, it is also a great experience to discover what they are going to do in the future is exactly what they want to do.
Yeah. And coming back to the collaboration or the relationship between industry and academia, so things are moving very fast, especially now with artificial intelligence and all the features we have, and chat gpt now. Is it difficult for the academia, to keep the pace, to incorporate, as you well said, part of this fast trend from the industry into specific subjects? Is it difficult to modify, or maybe to even create a new subject in the curricula? How is this process of adaptation in the university?
Well, actually, it is difficult to introduce new courses, but if the program is well designed, that you will have some elective courses which can be adapted to modern times, right? So, in the case of our undergraduate programs, we've got plenty of elective courses that the students can take, and these courses are renewed every year. So, for well, for example, we offer things such as audiovisual translation, machine translation. So, I would say that in that respect, it is not that difficult. We have the freedom to incorporate new knowledge. And about, for instance, incorporating things such as GPT in the contents of a course. Well, for many of us, it is not that difficult because actually we are involved in the creation of those tools. Because many of those tools, we have the feeling that they stem out of nothing, maybe, but they are actually developed by researchers, or researchers most of the times, by researchers working in collaboration with professionals. So we are also involved in the creation of such models.
Hmm.
GPT is based on models that process natural language. So I wouldn't say it is particularly difficult to include new knowledge. Well, obviously, this doesn't work as well for every undergraduate of master's degree. It depends a little bit on the design of the whole program and on the experience and knowledge of the teachers who are in charge of the courses. But if you put that effort, I mean, if you struggle to be up to date and you incorporate new things into the curriculum, then I don't think it is particularly challenging.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, sometimes we have this misconception that university is one world and the industry is the other world, but in the end, they are so well connected. It's just, stopping a bit and seeing the connections between them. And regarding this renewal that you say that when you can incorporate new knowledge, either in the forms of subject or just renew the materials of the same subject you are studying, but maybe there's a new technology and you just incorporate it. This renewal, do they need authorization from, I don't know, from the government, or is it on at university level? How difficult are these renewals?
Well, it depends. If you want to offer a new elective course, it is not difficult at all. You just offer it because inside the program you already said, because you have to write a report that you have to send to the government when a program is being designed. So to be accepted, you have to send this report and you get the authorization to start it. If in that report you've already said that you're going to have, let's say, 10 elective courses, and that those courses are going to be about translation and new, don't know, new products, new procedures related to translation, then it is not going to be a problem. Then you will offer those courses and that's it. If, for instance, you want to change a compulsory course, that is really, really difficult because you have to send an application which will take 1 year to be solved, and well, it might be rejected.
Oh,
Yes. So the key is to design the programs very well from the very beginning so that they allow for a certain flexibility, which is going to fall on elective courses.
yeah. That's a great tip, I suppose, for any new professors, if they take the challenge of creating new courses.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that you really walked us not only through your professional experience, but explained briefly also the Spanish academic system and the relationship between universities and industry. And now, just as a conclusion for our audience, or do you have, we talking about recent graduate students or professionals who are already in the industry, but they might want to change something in their career or maybe from make the switch from the industry into the academia. Could you just summarize for us which would be the main takeaways from your side, the main basic skills or requirements? What should one consider from your perspective?
Well, I
What would
think
you
that,
advise?
yeah, it is actually not about your skills or not about your training. It is usually about what you want to do. So if you can sit down and think for a while about what you want to do for the rest of your life, then, well, just go for it. It doesn't matter if at the beginning you think it is going to be difficult, because many times we simply go for something which is at the moment more achievable. But well, actually, with time and effort, we can achieve whatever we want to. So then, in the end, we want to, don't know, to be a full professor. So why not? It is a matter of time and effort, just that. But it is true that we have to do that introspective work to first think what we really like. And I would tell people not to be afraid. I mean, whatever you like, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't need to be, don't know, the most difficult thing in the world or the easiest thing in the world, because everything is good if that is what you want. But it is true that the most difficult thing might be to sit and think about what you really like.
Exactly, identify your goal and have clarity, and then it's just a matter of researching what exactly you need and start the journey, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that. So Thank you so much, Raquel. I really appreciate your time sharing
Thank
your
you.
insights with us, and for sure that many people will find inspiration or even answers.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
I invite you to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all other major platforms. Subscribe, but also share it with persons who might find it useful.